Hey everybody in the VC, it's Matt, and I was just checking in. I wanted to a couple of things. First of all, I haven't heard anyone mention this, so maybe people don't know it's out, but I picked this up, got this yesterday, so looking forward to getting into that. So far, I've played just the remastered regular CD. I haven't gotten into the extras or anything. But on a more serious note, because everybody I've seen tons of videos of people doing unboxings and talking about this and showing it, so I'm not going to go into it too much other to say that so far I'm pleased. I haven't looked through the book yet, haven't listened to the extras, but I look forward to getting into that. One thing I'm not pleased are these CD sleeves that are like basically just flimsy, almost paper cardboard. You think for the price you pay that they could put some kind of heavier cardstock, and it's the same without opening the box. The looks like you get the vinyl album with it, but it's just a kind of an album cover that folds open and has all these CDs and the DVD and Blu-ray in it, and that's sort of that flimsy cardboard too, and that always bugs me. They do that a lot with record store day re-releases, unfortunately, where instead of getting the thick stock cardboard, you get this flimsy stuff, and for the price they're charging for records today, it's just sort of something that one of my pet peeves there. Um, I do like. I'm looking forward to getting into the box set. One thing I kind of thought about the Smile box set, the Beach Boys deal that came out about 3 or 4 years ago, and I don't know what the price. I can't remember what I paid for that, but I think I actually paid like 117 for the Sergeant Pepper deal because it was on Amazon and the price went down a couple of times, and I'd pre-ordered it 2 or 3 months ago or whenever, and so I ended up paying about 117. I don't remember what the Smile box set was, but it was somewhere in that price range. Might have been a little more, but you got several CDs, you got a book, you got 245s with a picture sleeve, and you got a double vinyl album. So it's kind of wish they would have included the vinyl record in there, but otherwise it's neat, and I'm looking forward. It's got that got the, as y'all already know, it's got the 3D cover. So those crazy Beatles always following the Rolling Stones with their 3D covers there. So uh, nice heavy box set. Looking forward to getting into that. What I wanted to do today, I saw a video. I'm just going to steal an idea from Joe, Mean Mr. Mayo. He did a video where he took all of the songs that the Beatles covered in their career, as opposed to songs that they wrote, and wrote them down and put them in order at his preference. And I thought I would do the same thing. And I'm going to follow Joe's guidelines. This is going to be only cover songs that they did on their official albums while they were together. So, because it'd just be too many if otherwise, I think. So I'm not going to be getting into things later albums like the BBC albums or the anthology deals or the bootleg stuff like the Get Back Let It Be sessions. They did a lot of cover versions or the Decagon singles, Cavern Club, all that stuff. So just the official, 1962 to 1970 recorded output, official record output. So he had 25 songs that they covered, and I guess that's all of them. I was thinking I might go online or look through my records and double check, but I'm just too lazy to do that. So I just wrote down the 25 choices he did, and then went through and put them in the order that I prefer them. And I think it was tough. It's like when we did those Beatle records in just the songs on the Beatle records in preference. I did that. Joe did that. I think quite a few people did that. It was really hard because Beatles my favorite band, and there's very few songs there that I don't like. So there's so many great songs that it's hard to sort of rank things. So I didn't want to overthink it too much, but I spent a little bit of time putting them in order of my preference. I'm not a fan of cover versions in the general sense, with the exception of the Beatles, and the Beatles tend to always be the exception to things. But most bands do covers, and it's just either not very good or it's basically a carbon copy of the original person or band who did it, so it's sort of superfluous and it's really no need for it. Rolling Stones did covers pretty well. early on, and Beatles, of course. But even like the Who and the Kinks and Yardbirds and some of those, they did some covers. Some of them were okay. Some of them were just sort of filler on albums. Beach Boys did a lot of covers that I mean, there were things like Sloop John B., which is a really good song, which I didn't know for the longest time wasn't the song that the Beach Boys wrote. This old song goes back to the 20s or something, and Barbara Ann was a cover of some the Rivingtons, I think, and I didn't know that till later. But I mean, a lot of bands do covers, and they're just they just sound pretty close to the whoever else had done it, or they're just not that good. So they're usually not much purpose to them, and sometimes they're just awful. But really, the only reason to do a cover, I think, if you're playing a concert and you want to cover some song, that's fine. But as far as putting something on record, is to either take something really obscure but really good to bring it to the larger general public, or if you're going to take something that's pretty well known to do something, take a fresh approach, do something different instead of just doing a basic cover. I mean, Devo did something interesting, and the Residents too, if y'all remember them, did something interesting with Satisfaction. The Rolling Stones is the better version than those two, but those two versions are different and fun and interesting enough to make them worthwhile. Um, the Armenia City in the Sky is the first song on the Who Sell Out album, my favorite Who album. And I originally, way back when, thought that was something that Pete Townsend wrote, but someone else wrote it. I can't remember who now. Uh, and I guess they put it out, some obscure guy or band. And so that was great that they did that song. So it's a great song. They do a great version of it. And that brings it sort of to more people know the Who than know whoever the guy that wrote the song originally. I know Tracy Ullman, They Don't Know. That's one of my favorite songs of the 80s. And I didn't know for the longest time that she didn't write that that's actually by Kirsty MacColl, who I didn't hear about till later. I've heard her version is great too, but I grew up on the Tracy Ullman song. That's the one I'm used to. I think in England, Kirsty MacColl is a lot better known than she is in America, so they probably prefer her version over there, even though Ullman is from there too. But so yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of covers, like I said. But the Beatles are the Beatles, and they're you know exception to the rule in so many ways, in so many cases, and so generally speaking, they always did the covers really great, I think, and added something fresh to them, and sometimes did them better than the people that did them originally. In many cases, they were just as good. So, and they also, with the exception of the deal on the Let It Be album, had the forethought or the sense to know that past about 65 or so, it was pretty much time to drop the covers and just stick with original written material, which a lot of bands didn't do, and didn't always work out so well for them. I don't think for those other bands. But yeah, so without further ado, we'll get to the list. There's 25 of them. I'm going from number 25 up to my number one choice. Some of these things Joe and I pretty much fall in line on. Some of them we differ. So we do agree on choice number 25, which is Maggie May, that little 1 minute or so song on Let It Be. The song was written by a guy whose name is Public Domain. And the Beatles do it better, a lot better than Mr. Domain does it. But seriously though, that's an old English folk song or Irish folk song or something. I like the song. It's fun. It gives me gives you a grin. It's fits in perfect on the Let It Be album as a little bridge piece in between songs. It's just that it's really short. It's a minute or so, and it's not something. I mean, I'm gonna play the Let It Be album. I just play it all the way through, so I hear it. But it's not something that I would go out of my way to hear just on its own, and wouldn't really stand up on its own as anything other than just a little gap filler bridge piece. Uh, maybe I don't know. Could be wrong. Maybe the single off the Let It Be should have been Maggie May on the A side and Dig It on the B side, and would have been a huge hit. Who knows? But Maggie May, I like it, but it's just a little trifle of a song. Number 24, I have Matchbox was a Ringo sung song, which is, and now I forget who wrote that. That's not a Carl, maybe that is a Carl Perkins song, but I can't remember. Good rockabilly song by Ringo, and he's a natural at that sort of thing. Uh, Plenty of people have talked about Bukus of Blues, have commented that it's a shame that Ringo never did another country album because he really should, or another kind of old 50s rock and roll rockabilly type album. And he's a natural for those songs. And um, so that's one of several that he did with the Beatles. It just happens to be my least favorite of the ones he did with the Beatles. Not that I don't like it, but it's just sort of a neither here nor there song. Number 23, I've got Kansas City, Hey Hey Hey, which was on Beatles for Sale, I believe. Uh, Again, Paul does a good job at this. It's just it's a bit of a generic for the Beatles, especially. The Hey 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 is kind of a rousing chorus at the end of that. That's another song that's just sort of tagged on to the end, Kansas City there. Um, I don't know. It's because the cover versions were not so bad on the first couple of albums, and then Hard Day's Night was their first album of all original songs. The only Beatle album that's only Lennon and McCartney songs, by the way. And so then here comes the Beatles for Sale, and there's some more cover versions on them. And I would think that if maybe kids didn't care at the time, but if you were around at the time as this was happening and went out and bought the Beatles album after Hard Day's Night, you're probably, of course, in America you got a ton of albums because they split them up and all, but in England you were probably disappointed that they weren't all originals, or maybe 15, 10, 16-year-old kids buying the records back then didn't really think about that one way or the other. But kind of seems like by the time of Kansas City and the Beatles for Sale, they had kind of tired of doing the cover versions and weren't as excited about them and didn't give them the same amount of attention and energy that they did in say 63, 64, from 65 on. But with the demands of the record label to produce, and so they're having to toss out a single every few months, toss out a couple albums a year, touring constantly, and on top of that, when they're not doing that, they're on TV and radio and photo shoots and just working nonstop, pretty much. And so I think by the time of Beatles for Sale, they kind of, we need more songs. We want to write more songs. Well, I was tired. Let's just grab Kansas City or something. So I think some of that attitude might have sort of crept in by that point. And so not exactly half-hearted attempt at it, but I think they just sort of did a run-through of it, where maybe if they had done that song a year or two earlier, they might have been more excited and more into it. Their version of it's okay, but again, it's just sort of like Matchbox. It's just kind of a neither here nor there song. Not a Beatles song that I can't stand, but not one that I go out of my way to. I want to listen to the Beatles today. Oh boy, I really want to hear Kansas City. That never happens. Number 22 is that damn guitar that Joe talks about. And I was never that crazy about this even when I was a kid. Dizzy Miss Lizzie. Um, Great vocal by John, a lot of energy because this is one of the earlier cover versions. But it's that, and it just kind of, you know, it's okay. 21, and actually, I mean, because I really like these songs. There's nothing here that I can't stand again. Uh, Maggie May is sort of just a afterthought thing, toss off. But so even though these are ranked up here, it doesn't mean I don't like them. It's just something's got to go somewhere in the order of the 25 songs. So number 21 is another Ringo song, "Act Naturally," which is again a Ringo doing country western song and doing a pretty good job of it. A little cornball of a song, but then again, Ringo's tends to be a little cornball at times, so that's okay. It fits in with his personality. He does a good job of it, but to me, that's a song from the Beatles' Yesterday and Today album, and it sort of throws the mood of the album. Kind of a sudden shift into another style of music or something, but it's an okay song. 20 is another Ringo song again, Honey Don't. Really good kind of countryish rockabilly song. Uh, it's um, it's fine, but again, this comes at a time when they were sort of past the point when they really should have been doing cover versions, and like I said, we're probably just doing them because they had to make albums constantly and they had to fill space and they could only write so much and they were writing nonstop, and so sometimes they just had to grab a cover version of an old song from their club days, and that's probably what they did in a lot of these instances, I would think. But Honey Don't comes in at number 20. Number 19, this might surprise some people. I do like the song's really good. Number 19, I go with Roll Over Beethoven, which is on With the Beatles, I think, the English album. In America, we grew up with it on this great album, my favorite album of all time, which I show all the time. I like the song. George does a good job. It's a fun song. It's my problem was always sort of this is my favorite album, like I said, and it's the lead off song on side one. It which shouldn't really have anything to do with how much I like the song or don't, but it does. I think they should have led the album off with something else, and there's so many great songs on here, but maybe you can't do that. You probably wouldn't want to lead off with "She Loves You" because that was the big hit, but maybe well, there's plenty of other songs that could have been the opening track on this, and I think Roll Over Beethoven would have worked better down here or somewhere in the middle. But good song. Just there's other cover versions that they did that I like a lot better. Number 18 is Bad Boy. Really good Lennon vocal, and he seems like he's getting into it, even though this is a latter day, kind of 65 or so when they did that one. But oh, it's number 18. Number 17, another surprise is going to be, because I really do like this song. Paul does a great job with it. Number 17, I've got Long Tall Sally. It's also on here. And the reason I rank it down there is because with the Beatles had a knack for covering songs that weren't really well known, and they had a knack for taking some of the songs that were well known that they covered and just putting their own unique stamp on them to where you could still love the original, but the Beatles version was just great, and they made it their own, and it was just as good. A lot of times it was better, like I've already said. With Long Tall Sally, I think Paul comes pretty close to Little Richard, which is hard to do, because Little Richard's Little Richard, but I think Little Richard's is, was a well-known hit before the Beatles did it. Little Richard did it pretty much perfectly, and there's not really any need for anyone else to do it, I guess, other than if they want to do it in concert or something. And Paul comes close to matching it, but it's just the Little Richard version is fine, and if that makes any sense. I do like the reading about the what's it, Tune In, that Beatles book that came out 2 or 3 years ago. There's supposed to be like 3 more volumes coming, or 2 more volumes coming. Uh, I can't remember who wrote that, but anyway, talking about when Paul was a little kid, like 12 or 15 or whatever, he would, when that song came out, he would walk around singing the whoo part in his house all day and drove his dad nuts. His dad thought he was, told him shut up and quit that, and thought he'd gone nuts. So that's kind of a funny mental image. Paul walking around, a little Paul walking around doing that all day, and his dad's like, anyway, 17, Long Tall Sally. 16, and this is a great one, great Lennon vocal. So one of the later ones, Rock and Roll Music. Joe, I think, said that he thinks the Beach Boys version is all you need, and Chuck Berry and the Beatles can go take a hike. But I always got to kid him a little bit there, Joe. Yeah, Rock and Roll Music at 16. Actually, the Beach Boys version is pretty pitiful, pretty lame. But Chuck Berry and the Beatles version is really good. Great Lennon vocal. But again, has to go somewhere, so it's 16. Number 15 is another one in that same vein, which is another great driving, hard rocking Lennon Beatle performance. Slow Down. Really like that one, but had to put it somewhere. Number 14 is a surprise because it's one a lot of people, like Joe said, think of as the worst Beatles song, other than maybe Revolution 9 or something. But Mr. Moonlight, I always liked it. I love the Lennon vocal on it. It's just so over the top and overwrought, and the song's kind of corny, but in all the best of ways, and it's got that weird, kind of not really, that weird organ solo in the middle of it that just shows up and doesn't really fit in there, and it goes away and it works somehow. And it's not a great song, but it's one that I always really like because it's almost, I don't want to say so bad it's good, but it's in that sort of neighborhood. 13 is pretty solid George, bit of rockabilly, country-ish song. Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby. Always love that. Number 12, great Buddy Holly song. A lot of great Buddy Holly songs, but it's one of my favorite, Words of Love, and I think the Beatles do a version that pretty close to sounding like Buddy Holly's version, so they don't change things up very much, but they just do it so nicely and so well that it really works. It's really, really cool, really pretty, touching song by both Buddy Holly and the Beatles. I like it a lot. Number 11, Ringo at his most boisterous, Boys, comes in. Maybe I Want to Be Your Man would be the equal of that as far as Ringo's most rocking song or something with the Beatles. But Boys at number 11. Number 10, this is kind of granny music for the old folk. Till There Was You, Paul song, of course. A lot of people don't like that. They think it's too, I don't know, like granny music, too tame, too syrupy, too whatever. I always liked it, though. I think it's a pretty song. Number 9, this is going to be a big surprise, Twist and Shout. Great Lennon vocal. We all know the story. They needed one more song. Fill out the album. Lennon went in and ripped that off, and even though he had a sore throat and all that, came out perfect. I think the Isley Brothers version is great. I think the Beatles version is better. This, of course, was their marquee song in concert for pretty much all of their touring years. Kind of was replaced here for a little bit with "I'm Down," but you know, people of a certain age, of course, will see this with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's a great song. You know, there's just what's that, number 9? There's just 8 that I like better. Number 8 is Taste of Honey. Might be a surprise to some, but again, that's sort of sounds more like a standard, more like an older crooner type song or something, but I always like that one. Number 7 is Chains, which I always liked. I love that first album of theirs because it's sounds Beatley, but it also doesn't sound Beatley. It sounds sort of like a holdover from 50s music or very very early 60s music. And then from their second album on, they were definitely the Beatles. So that first album has a certain, hey, it has great vocals, some of the best vocals they ever did, and they did great vocals throughout their career. But it's got a certain hesitancy and innocence and naivete that was never around again after that, because they finally got a recording contract after years of trying and working at clubs and all. And then by the time of their second album, they pretty much were confident in and knew who they were, and they never really sounded like they did on that first album again. And but the first album is really something special. I've always liked it. So Taste of Honey at 8, Chains at 7. Number 6 is one that I don't know if Joe was crazy about this one or not. Devil in Her Heart. George song was by a band called the Dantes, a girl group, and I think George just really puts his all into singing it and just gets into it and does a great performance. It's a great song. The Dantes were a strange group. It's a girl group, and there's not a whole lot known about them that I've been able to find out. They only recorded maybe 2 or 3 45s. They never made an album, and then they didn't have any success, so I guess they just broke up. I think, and I'm probably wrong on this, that someone from the group or connected to the group somehow might have gone on to some later success as a producer or something like that, but I'm probably wrong on that. But the Dantes, they put the record out, and I should have looked it up. I don't remember what label they are on. I've heard the song. I looked it up on YouTube. I heard their version is, of course, Devil in His Heart. Pretty good song. The Beatles version, I think, is better. But it's just because they put the single out on a little nothing label, so they weren't on Motown or Stax or anything like that that was known, and went absolutely nowhere. Probably sold, if it even sold 100, 200 copies, who knows? It didn't chart. Probably didn't get any airplay, and that's in America. And so in England, it did even, well, nothing at all. Wasn't a known song, wasn't a known band. So it's just kind of strange as how these kids in England, because apparently they had were singing this song back in the Cavern days and stuff toward the right before they got the recording contract. So how in the world George Harrison or whichever one of the Beatles got hold of this or learned about this song? It's kind of, it's not such a stretch that they would learn some album track off an Elvis or Buddy Holly or Little Richard album that wasn't a single, that wasn't a hit, because they were kind of known for doing songs that other people didn't do in their club days. And but how in the world they ever got a hold of that song when, you know, pretty much 99% of nobody in America ever heard of the Dantes or that song, let alone kids over in England and Europe. So anyway, I always like that song. Number five is I think this was the first Motown hit with was it Barrett Strong? And if I'm is that right? But anyway, Money, great song. The Motown original's great. Beatles is even better. Just a great driving track. It's one of the highlights of well, it's on this album. So just just a 10 out of 10 song. Number four, another one of my favorite Lennon vocals, Anna. Go with him. Number three, again, Baby It's You. Number two, You Really Got a Hold on Me. And my number one favorite Beatle cover version is Please Mr. Postman. Delivered the letter, the sooner the better. That's always been, I did a contest way back when about your favorite little snippets, few seconds of music moments. And that's one of my favorite little couple of seconds of music. So that is it. And yeah, I'll be back with Beach Boy reviews. I ran through and reviewed all the albums I have, and the next album in line, next couple albums in line, I don't have them, so I need to get them. So I'll be back to do that, and but I'll be doing some other things by and by. Hope everyone has a good weekend, and we'll see you then.